Evening, everyone. Thank you, Center for Adivasi Research and Development, especially Dr. Rubina Das and Mr. Jaina. Today's question is political question and development and vision 2036. So I should first clarify that I am not a very political person and I don't have much competency in the politics. So I will start with the economics questions and then we'll try to answer these questions through some political perspective, okay, whether the economic outcomes can be explained through the political institutions or the political settings in the state. So coming to the questions, like if we start with first of all, Odisha is going to complete 100 years of its formation in the year 2036, and so a lot of people are also now interested and who are preparing a vision document. And in fact, since I am the secretary of Odisha Economics Association, we are preparing a Odisha Vision 2036 document, and we have involved about 40 authors having competency in different fields, and we are also taking opinions from different people how to make this document an inclusive one. So we'll keep that context in our mind, that how can we transform Odisha into a at least medium income category state where the basic minimum facilities or basic minimum public goods are provided to all, because within say 14 years time we cannot definitely become the first state of India or the most developed state of India, so that would be not practical. So we can at least give an ambition to become a middle income state of India. And so we should first discuss what what is the present situation of Odisha. Okay, I think let me share a PPT. If that I think that will be better for you to see some graphs. Yeah. So this is my PPT. Yeah. Okay. So political questions, development and vision 2036. So this is the situation of Odisha at present. If you see the per capita income of Odisha at present, of course, we don't have the estimates for the year 2022, but the data of 2020 actually says that the per capita income of Odisha was 1,04,000, approximately 1,04,000 rupees. But an average Indian had the per capita income of 1,34,000 rupees. And if we see that who is the richest state in our country, then it is Goa, which is a very small state, and it has close to 3 lakh rupees income, not actually or even more than that. And so we are not going to discuss the richest state, but at least if you compare the situation of Odisha with the average Indian, then we are lagging behind. And I wanted to see how has Odisha performed in last 75 years, starting from say 1950 to present. And you see that somewhere in mid 60s, Odisha's per capita income was almost comparable to that of the national average. And that was, of course, for a very small time. We see that the per capita income of Odisha was comparable to that of the national average. But then from late 60s onwards, we see that the situation of Odisha has declined steadily. And in recent years, that basically starting from 2003-4, the situation of Odisha has improved a little bit, and but then it has not helped the state to catch up with say the national status or the national average. And if you see the blue line, actually, you see that it is no Odisha's per capita income is less than 80% of an average Indian. So 20% uh, shortfall is still there, and to be comparable with that of the national average. Now, many people are interested actually to know also that okay, in last uh, 22 years, one political party has been ruling, and one chief minister is in the power, and what has happened to Odisha? Whether, and in fact, the chief minister has been getting no different recognition at national level, that most popular chief minister of the country. So, no, then we should see also that what has happened Odisha's position. So you see the per capita income of Odisha and compare this with the other states. Then in the year 2000, because that is the starting point where the new chief minister came to power, and Mr. Naveen Patnaik came to power, and BJD comes to power, and then we had 24th rank out of 28 states. We were at 24th level in per capita income terms. And then gradually you see that by 2011-12, we moved to 21st position. And then in the year 2018-19, for which we have the data, latest data, because we don't have the per capita income of 2021-22. So I'm using the per capita income of 2018-19, and by that time, Odisha has moved up to 18th position. So this looks quite a significant achievement, I would say, that in last 20 years time, Odisha has progressed quite a lot, at least in per capita income terms. So overall, state's income has gone up, okay, but and this is quite significant. 6th position improvement from 24th to 18th is a significant jump, okay, and so definitely the ruling party would take credit for this, and data speaks on this. So we have nothing to hide. We all have to accept this. So this is a significant change. But that the per capita income has what we call that statistics. It conceals more than it reveals. So the per capita income of a state does not reveal the distribution of the income. Okay? And I will give an example that I use very often. In Odisha, now you would see that in last 20 years, a lot of improvement has happened in the manufacturing sector, and particularly in the mining industry. So the growth is largely driven by the industry, and that is mining industry and the metal-based industries. And in fact, in the coming years, our industry is also going to witness faster growth. Okay? And that is already those signs are already there, because a lot of industries are coming to the state, and you see that the oil refinery in Paradeep, and that can have actually a lot of forward and backward linkages. Similarly, the mining industry or the metal-based industry can have a lot of forward and backward linkages, and that is already happening in the state. And Kalinganagar industrial plant, which started with a lot of controversy, is now becoming the industrial hub in Odisha, and then Bhadrak, and then Dhamra port. All those things are going to come up in the coming days. So industrial development is definitely going to happen in the state. But then what happens in these industries, you see that the employment elasticity is quite low. They produce a lot of output, but they don't employ much people. Very few people are employed, because minings are now completely mechanized, and even the metal-based industries are also highly mechanized. So very few people get employment. So what happens? You produce the output in the state, but then that output doesn't reach anyone. A few people who own the company, they take away the profits to even sometimes other states. So you would see that, in fact, when I go to district level, that will be quite evident. And since we are discussing this distribution of income, I can give the example of Keonjhar district. If you see Keonjhar district, then in per capita income terms of that district, if you compare the 30 districts of Odisha, then in per capita income terms, Keonjhar district would come among top 10 districts of the state. But if you look at the poverty incidence and the monthly per capita consumption expenditure of Keonjhar district, it comes at the bottom 10 districts of the state. Now, what does it imply? That means because of the excess mineral production, we see that the district domestic product of Keonjhar district comes among the top 10 districts. But since the income is not distributed in that district, the consumption expenditure of the people does not increase. And that is why it comes among the bottom 10 districts of the state in terms of monthly per capita consumption expenditure. And if the consumption expenditure is low, it will lead to a high incidence of poverty. So the per capita income story is not that rosy. Okay? Of course, at national level, we may argue that our situation has improved in aggregate terms, okay? And that's how we are going to see the consumption expenditure data, which reflects the distribution of the income. Now, this is the data of consumption expenditure, monthly per capita consumption expenditure of Odisha and India. And last two columns show Odisha's share in the national level. So that means take the monthly per capita consumption expenditure of Odisha and divide it by that of the national average for rural and urban India. And you would see that the monthly per capita consumption expenditure of rural Odisha is 70% of the monthly per capita consumption expenditure of an average rural Indian. And if you are thinking about the urban people, then also it is only 75% of the urban average Indians. Okay? And if you see the intertemporal comparison, then we see that it has not really gone up. Okay? In 60s and 70s, you see that things are a little better, but then gradually things are deteriorating. In fact, during the same time when we say that Mr. Patnaik, Naveen Patnaik, or the BJD would take credit for raising the per capita income, you see that the monthly per capita consumption expenditure as a share of the national average has gone down. Say from 1990 to 2000, it was 70%, or in 2001 and 2, it was almost 79% of the national average. Now that has gone down to 70%. Okay? So it implies that growth has happened in the state, output has grown, but this output has not reached the people, large section of the society. Okay? And that has that is reflected in the fall in the monthly per capita consumption expenditure of the people, and relatively also when we compare with the national average, both in urban and in rural Odisha, people have not got much benefit from this growth process. So this is an exclusive growth. This is not an inclusive growth. So that is a matter of serious concern. And again, to show some relative ranking of the state, we see that in the recent multidimensional poverty index of Niti Aayog, Odisha's rank is at 9th place. But in the past, whenever Tendulkar committee had come up with the report, in 2011, we were at the 6th place, and in 2014 we are at third place. So things have improved. From like being considered as the poorest state, now we have gone up to the 9th rank. So this is somewhat okay, we can say, but not 100% satisfactory, because I have already shown you that how Odisha's situation has deteriorated in terms of the monthly per capita consumption expenditure. This is the distribution of poverty. Okay, that when we say that certain percentage of people are poor in the state, then we also need to see that who are these poor people. Okay? And if we see the distribution among the social categories, then see, okay, in 2011-12, because that is the latest year for which we have the poverty estimates, and based on that, we say that 36% of the people of Odisha are living below the poverty line. But if you see the social groups, then 64% of the Adivasis are living below the poverty line. And to give a number, we have 4.5 crore population, and 23% people are tribal. That means almost 1 crore people are tribal. And out of 1 crore tribal population, 64% people are poor. That means 63 lakh people out of 1 crore Adivasis are living below the poverty line. Similarly, scheduled caste, 42% or 41.39% of scheduled caste are living below the poverty line. OBCs, 24.16%. And the general category is the most privileged one, and among them only 13.2% people live below the poverty line. So that means poverty has a caste identity, and because if you are privileged and you are born in the general category households, you are less likely to be poor. But if you are unfortunate and you are born in a tribal family, then 64% chance is that you will be poor. That means, to put it again in simple terms, out of 10 tribal households, almost 7 people will be poor, and out of 10 scheduled caste households, 4 people would be poor. And but if it is in general category, then it would be no less than 2, okay? Out of 10. So so poverty has a caste in Odisha also. And then coming to the region, okay, whether poverty is concentrated in a few pockets, then also we see that yes, poverty is concentrated in a few pockets, and we see that coastal region is the most advanced where poverty is less. But southern India, southern Odisha has maximum incidence of poverty, and the most infamous KB regions has the maximum poverty. In fact, this has been sorry. The recent Niti Aayog report also has revealed the same thing, that poverty is concentrated in the southern districts of Odisha. So this is the multidimensional poverty index. I'm not getting into the details. So coming to Odisha's situation, you see that there are different colors, and Odisha comes among the okay, at 9th place, and not very poor, but not also coming in the middle income group states. And coming to the district wise distribution of the poverty, you see that Nabarangpur, Malkangiri, Koraput, Raigada, Kalahandi, Mayurbhanj, Kandhamal, Koraput, And so you see that the example that I was giving, that Keonjhar district also is marked orange color. That means it comes among the bottom, or among the poorest districts of the state. We produce a lot of minerals, and in fact, top grade minerals are produced. And Jajpur, which is the neighboring district, has the industrial hub. But then this high value extraction of mineral has not really benefited the people of Keonjhar district. And but you can see that what has happened to the Sundargarh district. Sundargarh is a little better, okay? And Sundargarh is also a tribal dominated district, but then it is much better than Keonjhar, and that could be probably explained by high industrialization. A lot of industries are there, and development of education in that particular district. So at least because of industrialization, some distribution has happened in Sundargarh district, even though it has a lot of tribal population. It comes under a scheduled no district of the state where a lot of tribal people live, but still it is better. So if we have to learn something, at least for the development of tribal, I think probably we can learn something from Sundargarh district, and unlearn from Keonjhar district, because we do a lot of production, but it doesn't benefit everyone. anyone. So yeah, this is the poverty map of the state. So that maximum poverty is concentrated in the southern part of the state. So the debate of that east and west uh, doesn't probably exist, because we see that poverty is not there in the west, but it is concentrated in the south and some part of the north. So these are mostly the tribal dominated districts. So that means tribal people have not benefited at all from the growth process. That is a matter of serious concern. We will have the discussion on the implication, the political implications for this. Yeah. So now that we have discussed the economics part of this, that how the growth has changed over last 70 years, and especially in last 20 years, and who has benefited from this growth process, and what are the implications where poverty has been concentrated. Now, coming to the political questions, we see that ideally in a democratic country, people should protest, okay? Because the citizen has the right to protest, then the citizen should protest, and because every citizen has the equal right, okay? And the modern democratic nations are called as the welfare nations. So ensuring welfare of every citizen is the duty of the state and the nation. So based on that, based on the regional disparity we have seen in the state, there have been regional movements, and that's how we can say that the Western Odisha people have demanded from time to time, for sometimes even to the extreme of demanding a separate state, or similarly having Western Odisha Development Council. And so you can say that there has been some mobilization based on the region. And to some extent, sometimes in southern part also there has been some demand, but then that the political mobilization in the south has remained quite weak, I would say. Like the Western Odisha, I think the Southern Odisha mobilization has not really been so strong. And then coming to the social mobilization, I think that has remained quite weak. Why social mobilization is so important here? Because we saw that the poverty has remained concentrated among some sections of the society, and whereas the social mobilization has not happened. And That means there is an elite capture of the politics in the state, and also the bureaucracy, and also you can say the public administration. So that means, if there is a political elite capture of the politics and the institutions, democratic institutions, then the distribution process would not be even. Okay? And that's how you see that the social movements, say whether it is, in fact, if you compare the southern states, say for example, if you think about the Dravidian movements, or even in Kerala, if you see the analyze the social movements, all social movements have been led by the OBCs. Okay? But in Odisha, the OBC mobilization is probably absent, completely absent, and the mobilization of the tribal is also very weak. Okay, from no, sometime we see that uh, some people, some tribal people have mobilized themselves for specific objectives. Okay, so even some people may say that the Naxal movement in the state, whether it will be treated as a movement at all. But so that would be quite regional, and some industrial movements, say for example, from time to time in specific regions, we have had certain movements like Kasipur movement, we had Niyamagiri movements, we had recent industrialization movement in Jagatsinghpur. But those are not actually pan Odisha, and not on specific social issues. Those are not on covering the entire state and mobilizing all sections of the society. That has never happened. So the social mobilization in the state remains weak, and so we see that the institutions would not then function as purely democratically. Okay, so there are government institutions, but the service delivery would become weak, and it would not serve all section of the society, and those are reflected in the southern part of the state, where we see the Naxal movements are there. And why that has happened? Because there are no roads, and there is no drinking water facility, there is no internet connection. So why this has happened? The same democratic party is elected by the state, and the same institutions are there. We have a BDO everywhere, we have a sarpanch, but how come these institutions are not delivering the services in certain pockets? So that means these institutions are not democratic. Okay? Although officially it looks democratic institutions, but when it comes to the service delivery, it is not really really acting democratically. And then, is the politics fully democratized in the state? The question is quite complicated. Okay? Because the democratization of the politics is also important. Competitive politics is necessary for the development of a state. So if you see Kerala, okay, then Tamil Nadu, the southern states particularly, then their political institutions are also quite democratized, and that is why sometimes it is said that political stability and too much of political stability is not a good indicator for the development of a state. And again, that the best example is Kerala. In Kerala, every 5 years, people change the political party, so that each political party that rules for 5 years is on the toe. It has to work to satisfy the people, and even that also doesn't ensure them coming back to the power in next 5 years. So, although some people may argue that no political stability would attract industries and so on, but that may not. So, okay, that may attract industry, but that may not benefit to all sections of the society, because if there is no democratic political institution, then the distribution doesn't happen. It gets concentrated. So, in fact, uh, uh, continuity of power with by one political party, or say one person also ruling for quite long time would not be a good indicator for that region. Okay. In fact, uh, if you see also the political institution in the state, if you say the functioning of the state legislative assembly in the state, then it also doesn't reflect the democratization of the politics in the state, because you see the functioning of the state legislative assembly, number of days it functions, and the issues that are discussed in the state legislative assembly, no, that is not quite encouraging. Okay, because the state legislative assembly is closed much, or adjourned much before the scheduled date, and very few issues are discussed in the state legislative assembly. So that means it doesn't reflect the democratization of the politics even within the political party, be it ruling party or opposition parties. We do not see a democratic space within the political party, where issues are debated and discussed, or say diversity of the opinions are respected. That we don't see actually. So that means the political space in the state is not democratic. Okay? So that means if it is not democratic, then forget about the distribution of the benefits. If politics is not democratic, then how will the economic benefits be distributed? So these are some of the questions that we need to think. Then coming to the vision 2036, we see that okay, we now are eyeing that at least we should have some ambition that by 2036 we should transform our situation. Okay, we should not continue the way we are now continuing, and we should at least aim to have zero poverty. Okay, because poverty is crime, because people who live below poverty line, they only know that they don't have the dignity in the society. So in a welfare nation, in a democratic nation, if people are not getting sufficient food to eat, like decent cloth to wear, a decent housing for living, and even nutritious food, and some healthcare services, and good education, if they're not getting these basic things, that means what is that means they are not living in a democratic country, or they are not living in a welfare nation or in a welfare state. So basic minimum things should be assured to everyone, and our first target should be to completely remove poverty from the state. And in Odisha, to achieve zero poverty, our priority should be to basically focus now should be on the tribal people, okay? Because maximum people, a large section of the tribal population is living below the poverty line. So we should analyze very closely that why our development model is not helping the tribal people. What has gone wrong? We need to analyze that. And of course, the challenges are quite complicated. It's not easy also, because I think Odisha has the maximum varieties of the tribals. 62 tribes are living in the state, and that also poses a different challenge for the policymakers, because if you have homogeneity of the population, then you will have also easy implementation of the development policies. But when you have so many varieties of so much of diversity of the population, then your implementation, policy implementation becomes quite a challenge. So, but we cannot take that excuse for so long. It is already 75 years, and if still 36% of the people live below poverty line, and from a specific section, from a specific population category, if 64% people would be living below the poverty line, then this cannot be accepted. And because on the one hand we are saying that, you see, we are achieving fast economic growth, then for whom we have achieved this economic growth? And then we have to provide public goods to all. Okay, and what are the public goods? Like good roads to all, providing electricity, mobile network, banking services. These are the public goods. Okay, everyone should have easy access to all these things. But unfortunately, we do not have. In fact, there are no blocks in the state where there are no colleges. Okay, so I think if I remember it correctly, Thuamul Rampur is the most backward block of the state, and in this block, probably there are no degree colleges, and there are also other blocks where in panchayats there are no schools, colleges. So we have to provide these things, and because government should not think about the profit or the cost, and it should provide these basic things, and free and quality education for all. I think we have not yet provided this, and free and quality healthcare for all is a fundamental. These are now we have made the elementary education as free and compulsory education for all. But then we see that the dropout rates are quite high among tribals. So that means the education that we are providing also has some limitations, and we need to think on it. That why we are not able to retain all the children. Okay? And for that, I have written multiple times in newspapers that we need to probably rethink the model of the tribal education, and particularly when we try to put them in the residential schools. I think we should not take them to far off places. At present, the tribal children are taken away from their district, and put them. We are putting them in different other districts. No, my proposal is that every panchayat, headquarter, or at least in every panchayat, wherever there are no tribals, no number of tribals are more, or you can find out the scheduled tribal areas, scheduled areas, or scheduled panchayats where percentage of the tribal people is more than 50%, or you can bring it to less than that, also 25% above tribals. At panchayat level, there should be a very big residential school, and the tribal children from that panchayat should be enrolled there, and they should have also the residential facility. Okay, and in the weekend, they should also be allowed to go to their home so that they remain culturally rooted. So I am saying this because at present, I have seen some tribal schools in or ashram schools in Bhubaneswar, and the students are from sometimes Mayurbhanj, from Koraput, very far off places. So in such a case, what happens? The parents of these children don't meet them for a year. So these children only go once in a year to their home. So they are completely neglected, and we also hear sometimes some kind of lapses in the girls' schools and in boys' schools also. So those lapses can be minimized if the children live closer to their parents. Okay, there will be a lot of accountability on the teachers, and then the cultural uprooting accusation will also stop, so that people remain the culture. In fact, I know once I had been to Jaipur, sorry, to Raigada, and then one mother telling us that, sir, when my child comes from Bhubaneswar to home, he doesn't eat the typical food that we eat in our home. So he demands the food that he eats in Bhubaneswar. So no, I'm not saying that people should not there should be mobility, definitely, but then again, the cultural things, not that all things are bad. Okay? So if now a person is developing inferior complexity, and is trying to reject his own culture, then that is probably not the right education that we're offering. So there should be good education, but then there should also be equal respect for each language and culture. The diversity should be respected, whether it is food, dress, or cloth, or religion, or culture, celebration. All diversity should be respected. So that having one big residential school at every panchayat level. Okay, I'm not saying that this should be exclusively for the tribal children. No, it will be open to all. Okay, and no, the people can be transported, provide them good transportation facility, because having small schools in every hamlet is quite expensive, so you can't manage this. So have very big school, have good teachers and good infrastructure, and then provide them. So the who tribal people are definitely in need of the accommodation, because they cannot commute every day, and they don't have also good food and accommodation facilities at their home, so they all can stay. Other people will have the day boarding facility, because anyway midday meal is provided in all schools, so that's a good thing, where that ensures nutrition and minimum food security to all. That also brings equality. If all people eat together, that sense of equality also develops. So I think we need to change the model of education in the state. And then coming to the healthcare system, and okay, we have progressed quite a lot in terms of healthcare delivery, because if you see the maternal mortality and infant mortality rates in Odisha, a lot of improvements have happened, particularly after the launch of the National Health Mission. We see that the institutional delivery has improved remarkably. People are now going to the hospitals to give birth to their children, but it is not yet sufficient. You see that sometimes the ambulance is not reaching the hamlets, tribal hamlets. Sometimes people carry the pregnant woman for 5 to 6 kilometers to reach to the nearest ambulance. So that means, first of all, we have not provided good roads that reflects, and then on the top of that, our healthcare institutions at block level, okay, or we can say the primary health care system is still remaining quite weak. So we need to change this and improve it significantly. Okay, and to give an example, I have narrated this at many places, that once my own cousin brother, when he was going to become a father, his wife was living in Baripada, and doctor suggested that you should take her to Bhubaneswar. Okay, and they could easily hire an ambulance and then transport her to Bhubaneswar, and so everything happened very smoothly. But that day, I was quite disturbed, okay, and disturbed for the simple reason that I was thinking that if this thing had happened to a poor person in Marvanj district, or say somebody living in Koraput or Raigada or Malkangiri district, and if the district headquarter will not have adequate healthcare services, emergency child care services, say NICU or whatever you call, then that means the poor people do not have the right to give birth to a child. It implies that. So in a democratic nation or in a democratic state and in a welfare state, if the poor person doesn't have the right to give birth to a child, then what kind of democracy and what kind of welfare nation we are talking about? So from that day, I have been arguing at many places that we should have a very good healthcare facility at every block level, 314 blocks, and in each block, we should have a very good facility for the healthcare, for at least the primary health, and for mother for self delivery of the children. So that there will be no division between rich and poor, and only the rich people can give birth to the child safely, and the poor people will not have the right to give birth to this child, it is not accepted at all. Okay, so we should have we have to actually develop. In fact, since the budget is coming up, in fact, I have also raised this point at many places, that government should, if required, government of India should come forward, state government should put money, and at every block level, we should have all the facilities required for delivering a safe child. Okay, so that should be assured, and that will also reduce the burden on the tertiary healthcare. Now, what is happening? For a simple primary healthcare, people are coming to Bhubaneswar. Okay, and that means that puts extra pressure on the tertiary healthcare system. So if we can strengthen the primary healthcare system at block level, then it will be evenly distributed, so people can access the tertiary healthcare easily. Whoever comes, wherever there is a specialized treatment required, they can come to Bhubaneswar. And for that also, we have no ambulance services, and that should be even strengthened much more. Okay, we should have more ambulances. So yeah, so free and quality education for all, and free and quality healthcare for all. In fact, we can have special lectures on health and education, like how to strengthen the education system, how to strengthen the healthcare system. But we will not get much into that. But yeah, at least we should say that we should work on this. If we have to transform Odisha into a middle income state, and then where it is called as a welfare state, then these are the basic things that state should provide. And then employment. Odisha has the bad record of sending people outside the state, whether the people working as bonded labor in the Andhra Pradesh brick kilns, or going to Surat and or elsewhere, or nowadays many people are going to golf also, and they get exploited there also. So we have the record of sending people outside. Now it is high time Odisha thinks how to create employment opportunities at at village level or at panchayat level. And again, on that, I had written an article in Dharitri long ago, that we can have one industry at panchayat level, following the Chinese model of village level enterprise, village enterprises, Chinese village enterprises. So there are many things that can be produced at village level, and we are stuck at MGNRG's Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. That only generates unskilled employment. But nowadays, nobody is interested to work as honest, unskilled worker. Now every person has some skill. So now that we have given so much of education, we have created so much of skill. Now we can have small enterprises at each panchayat on a public-private partnership board, and where some capital is mobilized from some shareholders, say 20, 30 shareholders, and they generate 50% of the money, and another 50% is say contributed by the state. And then we can create clusters actually in different panchayats depending on the natural resources availability, skill availability. You can have your production in a cluster, and you produce that and have a marketing chain also. Just like Amazon, we can have our own marketing chains, or sometimes we can integrate this also, production clusters to the online marketing chains. So this will create skilled and semi-skilled enterprise. In fact, for producing toys, we don't need really big engineers. We semi-skilled people can produce toys, and we don't have to import toys from China. We don't have to import chemicals from China if village enterprises can produce it. Because if China is producing all these things in their village enterprise, why can't we produce these things in village enterprises? So we need to think little bigger, instead of thinking too much on the unskilled rural employment guarantee scheme. We should think how to provide skilled and semi-skilled enterprises employment at panchayat level, And so this will create a completely new culture, entrepreneurship culture. So, then only Odisha can become a better state. Okay, and that will also help the distribution of the income, and it will help also alleviating poverty. So I think I'll stop, and we can take some questions. I have already taken a lot of time. So with this I stop, and yeah, we all need to think on the vision plan of Odisha. Yeah, thank you so much.